Evelyn McClure from the Western Sonoma County Historical Society. We operate the West County Museum on Main Street in Sebastopol. We also operate the Burbank Experiment Farm right here in town. And that's how the society began in 1974. Several people wanted to preserve Burbank's farm and cottage, and so they formed the society and got going and restored the cottage in the 1980s. It is now owned by the city, as is the West County Museum, which is the former Petaluma and Santa Rosa Railroad Depot. It was built in 1917, and it's all volunteer operation. We do exhibits twice a year on different topics of local history. We're going to do one on local sports heroes. It's sports from adults and youth all through the 20th century. That's coming up. It'll open on Apple Blossom Weekend. And we've done a number of things on the railroad, on apple industry history, local movies that were made, pioneer families, a lot of different topics. It seems like we have a Russian connection because of Fort Ross, but it was a little bit different than that. It was started in 1855, but it took a long time. It took till 1902 to incorporate. And there was a big battle about doing that. But the main thing was people wanted sanitation, decent sewer system, and that's how it got passed. Well, some of the most outstanding people that have lived in Sebastopol are Willard Libby, who graduated from Anley High School and found the whole idea of radiocarbon dating. And then the interesting thing that Luther Burbank, who had established his home and gardens in Santa Rosa, was looking for more property to do experiments that he really didn't want the public to see until he'd perfected things. So he found eventually 18 acres here in Sebastopol and conducted his experiments here until his death. Some of the events the Historical Society does to help preserve the history of the city. We celebrated the centennial of Sebastopol's incorporation in 2002, and then we instituted an annual cemetery walk. We've been doing this for 7 years. We have a program that goes up to Sebastopol Memorial Lawn, and we do 6 dramas based on the lives of people buried there. And we've done a new program every year, and it's highlighted people like Willard Libby's teacher, William Howard, who has a creek named after him in Occidental, Dutch Bill Howard, and a man who was a bouncer in a saloon in the Sierra when Black Bart came through, and families who are related to the Donner Party. We have Nancy Graves buried here. She was 9 years old and survived the Donner escapade. So that's been a fun program that everyone enjoys, and we enjoy doing it, and recruiting actors and writing the scripts, and it's just great fun to do it. Also talking about events, well, things that the Apple Blossom Parade, and it brings memories of the train down Maine. The Petaluma and Santa Rosa Railroad came here in 1903, and people were used to having the train roll down Main Street. And passenger service ended in 1932, but freight continued into the 70s. And it helped open up an agriculture market. People were growing all kinds of things here, apples and grapes and peaches and cherries, but it was very hard to get their things sold because they had to take it by wagon down to Petaluma to ferry it to San Francisco. So with the railroad, they could go to Santa Rosa, they're open up canneries. They started packing houses and dryers. It was used extensively in World War II. It was an incredible profitable thing for farmers here to produce those kind of crops, and for apples particularly, and all kinds of uses. So that was a big thing in town to have the railroad. It was a big help. And Steve Stedman, my colleague here at the museum, could probably fill you in. Steve grew up here. I've only been here 18 years.
Yeah, the train was kind of interesting. It was an electric train originally, and that was kind of unique. The pub that's across the street was named the powerhouse because it had been indeed the powerhouse. But they used to run straight down here to go down to Petaluma or out the back way over to Santa Rosa. And the thing that is now the Joe Rodata Trail was the train right-of-way. So that's why it's sort of nice and flat and good for walking. But when I was a kid, they were still freight on the line. And I used to live up on Jesse Street, and to walk down to Anley High School, we'd go down to Dufrank and then walk the train track. Now, we didn't know, now that they get on the Stagel and all, ooh, it's good for your reading skills. We didn't know that, we just thought it was fun to walk on the train track. And you heard enough noise from the train that you got the heck off if it was coming close. But that was fun, and then later on, I worked for Frizalinas, and we used to bring in carloads of coal, gondola carloads of coal, and then sack that up in sacks 100 pounds each to sell to folks so they could burn that in their fireplaces or in their stoves. So freight kept running until the 70s, and then the whole thing went away. But the train was a biggie. My dad lived south of town about 3 miles, and he used to ride the electric car to Anley High School. That was how he got to school. And then when he graduated from Anley in 1926, he used to ride the electric car to Petaluma and work down there in the poultry producers with the eggs and stuff, and then would ride the car home. That's how he made his money to go to Davis. And so it was a big thing having the train here. My mother-in-law grew up in Tamales, and they used to ride a train to Freestone, a jitney to Sebastopol, the train to Santa Rosa, and then back, because Highway 1 wasn't paved until 1938. So that was a full-day trip if you didn't have a car, and a pretty darn long trip if you did. But the train was a biggie. Mm-hmm. Well, Sebastopol was started as Pine Grove back in 1855, and then a little later, 1856, a couple of fellows named Stevens and Hibbs had a little altercation, and Stevens ran off and was trying to pound the crap out of him. I'm sorry, I can't say that. Stevens was trying to get after Hibbs pretty good, and Hibbs ran into the general store. And the general store fellow, a guy named Dort, he wouldn't let Hibbs or Stevens come in. And so Stevens marched up and down out and fried, and his buddies bought him drinks, and he kept yelling at, Hibbs, come on out, you coward. He questioned the marital status of his parents at the time of his conception and other things. And at any rate, it lasted for a while, but it was a hot day. And so Stevens finally got tired and went home probably to sleep it off. But the store was also the post office. And so instead of Pine Groves, folks started sending things to Hibbs, Sebastopol. So later when the town does sort of get started, there's already a Pine Grove on the post office rolls, so they decided that we would be Sebastopol. So even though we had the folks up at Fort Ross, Sebastopol didn't come from that. It came from the fact that the fight happened during the siege of Sebastopol in the Crimea, and so they at least knew something about politics back in those days. And that's our story. We're sticking to it. If you'd like to know more about Sebastopol, please visit our website, and you'll find some stuff there.